So, what does the Bible actually say about faith and politics? It's a question that gets debated a lot these days. Today, we're going to dig into the scriptural framework for civic engagement, building a case, from the text, for why believers are called to be active participants in the life of their nation. Now, to have a clear discussion, we've got to define our terms right up front. In the framework we're exploring today, this term Christian nationalism isn't presented as a political party line. Instead, think of it as a spiritual posture, a sense of deep responsibility for the health of your nation that compels you to both pray and to act. And that leads us to a second absolutely crucial term, ecclesia. You know, when Jesus said he would build his church, the word he used in the original Greek wasn't really a religious word at all. It was a secular, political term for a ruling assembly, a group of citizens literally called out to govern. Keep that one in your back pocket, because that idea is a major cornerstone of this whole argument. All right, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We've just defined our terms. Next, we're going to look at some Old Testament models, then see how Jesus carries that mandate forward. After that, we'll unpack the New Testament's directives, boil it all down into a simple three-point framework, and then finish up with what this all means for your own civic responsibility. Okay, let's start at the beginning with the foundations. The source material we're looking at points right back to the Old Testament for some really clear patterns of believers getting directly involved with national and political issues. Now, what's really fascinating here is the contrast between these two heavy hitters, Daniel and Esther. See, Daniel doesn't just pray for his nation. He fully identifies with it. He confesses, "We have sinned." He's taking ownership of the collective failure. Then you have Esther. She's facing the complete annihilation of her people, praying with, quote, deadly anxiety. But her prayer is so strategic. She's not just asking for a miracle. She specifically asks for eloquent speech before she takes the massive risk of going before the king. In both of these stories, you see prayer isn't a substitute for action. It's the preparation for it. And this isn't just a pattern you find in stories. It's actually rooted in a direct command. The prophet Jeremiah makes it crystal clear. God's people are supposed to actively work for the well-being of the community they live in because their own prosperity is directly tied to it. So Daniel and Esther, they weren't just reacting to a crisis. They were actually fulfilling a mandate. So a fair question at this point is, okay, but that's the Old Testament. Do those models still apply to believers today? Well, the source material argues absolutely and points to Jesus himself as the one who provides the bridge into the New Testament. And Jesus gives us the answer himself. He says flat out that he didn't come to get rid of the law or the prophets, but to fulfill them. What does that mean? It means these foundational mandates, like working for the well-being of your city, they don't just become obsolete. No, they're carried forward and given their ultimate meaning in him. So, with that foundation firmly in place, let's turn to the New Testament and see its own direct commands for how to engage the world, and that includes its governing structures. Jesus gives his followers these two powerful metaphors. You are the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Just think for a second about what salt and light actually do. Salt actively preserves. It stops decay in its tracks. Light actively illuminates. It pushes out the darkness. Neither of them are passive. This is presented as a mandate to influence and transform every part of your environment. And that presents a pretty direct challenge to any interpretation of separation of church and state that says a believer should just completely withdraw from public life. And this brings us full circle, right back to that crucial word, ecclesia. Remember, the ruling assembly? If the church is, by its very definition, a type of governing body, then it was designed from the get-go to be that salt and light, to have a real foundational influence on society. The name itself implies civic engagement. So after looking at the evidence from both the Old and New Testaments, the sources we're examining distill all of this down into a really clear, actionable framework for a believer's political responsibility. Here it is, and this is presented not just as one possible interpretation, but as the necessary theological default. Number 1, intercede for the nation. Number 2, identify with the community, just like Daniel did. And number 3, act for its well-being, where prayer becomes the catalyst for tangible engagement, exactly like it was for Esther. You know, to make this even clearer, think about it this way. You can be salt that just stays in the shaker, or you can be salt that's actually out there preserving the meat. You can be a thermometer, which just reflects whatever the temperature of the culture is, or you can be a thermostat, which actively works to set the temperature. Active preservation. That looks like civic duties, voting, community service, public advocacy. Passive isolation is, well, it's just checking out of the whole conversation. This brings us to our final section, and honestly, it might be the most important one. How do we turn this whole theological framework into something we actually do in the real world? The whole point of walking through this is to move from just understanding it to actually applying it. So the challenge isn't just to agree or disagree. It's to ask yourself, based on this mandate to intercede, to identify, and to act, what is one tangible, specific, civic action you can commit to this week? Is it praying for a specific leader by name, researching a local issue on the ballot, maybe volunteering for a community group? The framework demands a response. The question is, what will yours be?